Well, hello 10thers, and I'm hoping that you all are doing well. Um, Wishing you all a very good morning, evening, and a very good afternoon. I guess the order didn't match up. So, well, how are you all? I'm fine, also sleepy, uh, but I'm making this video and hoping that you all will be going through the entire video, or at least going through something which will be imparting some knowledge or educating you about the First War of Independence. And talking about the First War of Independence, also talking about history, most of us actually do not want to study history. I mean, who studies history? Physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, these are interesting. History isn't that interesting, is it? And why do we actually need history? But I tell you, if there is something, or if we have to someday or the other, sometime in the future, have to stop a war, or have to find solutions how to solve, or how to actually help out a country in, or today we have problems like with China, India, Nepal, and we cannot use physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics to solve these problems. Problems like these need to be solved on the basis of history. Why did I just say so? It is because whenever we study history, because we need to know what actually had happened, so as to know why we are here and where we will be going after this. If suppose I come to your classroom with a plaster in my hand, and you all ask me suddenly, sir, how did you, or what had actually happened to your hand? And if I do not remember my history, if I do not remember my past, if I do not remember what had happened to me in the previous, maybe a few days, a few weeks, or maybe the last month, I will not be able to tell you how I got the plaster on my hand. I will be as blank as you will be. But if I do know my history, I will be able to give you an answer, and in future I will prevent any such happening from taking place. That is exactly why we need to study history. All the problems which we are facing as humans today, or all the problems which we have today in this world, can be understood if we go back and if we try to understand what had happened in the past. That is why history, or the study of history, is important. As Steve Jobs had famously said, we cannot know, or we cannot predict what will be happening, what will happen looking forward. We will be able to connect the dots only looking backwards. So I guess studying history is very important, and so as to develop, so as to move forward, we need to study how we came over here. So please let us take some interest in history. You all are in standard 10, and you all are not being able to study in the classroom. So I guess this is your last chance maybe to study history, because after this, if you all take up science or commerce, history will be nowhere to be seen. So please try to take as much interest as you can in these few coming months, and maybe, who knows, you may even fall in love with history and want to take up history further in your studies. But leaving all that aside, let us just continue with our lesson which we were doing. We are now down to the religious and the social causes which caused which did result in the revolt of 1857. When we are talking of the religious and the social causes, as I had already mentioned in the previous video, the Britishers, when they came to India, they did not embrace the Indian culture. They did not embrace the Indian way of living. They did not embrace the Indian climate. They did not embrace India as a country. India for them, or India to the Britishers, was always a foreign country which they had come, or which they were over here in India just because of one reason only: to make profits, and so as to amass as much loot as possible. That was the only reason why the Britishers were here. They had no intention of welfare. They had no such intention of doing good for the people. But here they started interfering with the laws. The previous rulers, whoever had come to India, or whoever were the invaders who had settled in India and started ruling over the country, they had not interfered with the laws as much as the Britishers did. They accepted the Indian laws, they changed their laws, or they ruled or governed according to the existing Indian laws. So there was not much change which was to be found in the previous, or there was not much change the Indians had to face when the previous rulers or the previous invaders had started ruling in India. But when the Britishers were ruling, they started, or they wanted to change the Indian way of living, Indian way of thinking, Indian culture, Indian language, Indian studies. So they wanted to, just because they wanted to do this, because they wanted to prove to the Indians that they were a superior race and the Indians were an inferior race. Now, why do we have this? Why did the Britishers have to do this? Because in order to rule over someone, you have to make the other person believe that that person is actually weak, and that is why someone will be able to rule over that person. So the Britishers wanted to break the morale of India, or of Indians, and the Britishers were trying to do this by undermining Indian culture, by playing down, or by putting down, or by looking down upon Indian languages, Indian culture, Indian religions, Indian society, and the Indian customs. Yes, I do agree, or everyone of you will be agreeing, that India was or that times India in the 1700s was in its dark stages or dark ages, but still India was not that inferior as the Britishers made it to be. And this was one reason why the Britishers were able to effectively rule over India, because they had put in that sense of inferiority in the Indians. And they started meddling, or they started changing some of the Indian laws. They started doing something which undermined the already existing layers or already existing rules of the society. Some of the things which the Britishers did was, or some of the points, like the Britishers started preaching, or the Catholic priests, they started preaching in the schools, they started preaching in the colleges, they even started preaching in the madrasas. The madrasas are the Muslim or Islamic centers of learning, and also in the tolls and the pathshalas, which are the Hindu centers of learning. So the Catholic priests, they started preaching, they started speaking about Christianity. There was no outright conversion, but there was always a fear of conversion. And in some places there was also forced conversions which were taking place. So all these things actually instilled a fear in the minds of the people, and also of the religious heads in India, that the Britishers will be, or the Britishers have that intention to convert everyone in India to their religion of Christianity. The other points in this are that the Britishers started making laws which interfered with the already prevalent Indian systems. Like the Britishers, although did something very good for the Indians, that was abolishing the sati system and also bringing in a law that made the widow remarriage, or that gave legitimacy to the widow remarriage. These were very good steps which the Britishers took. But these steps also angered the upper classes of the Hindus. Why? Because the upper class Hindus had devised these or had made these laws so as to benefit from these laws. If we are talking of the sati system was more prevalent in the upper classes of upper classes of Hinduism than in the lower classes, or in the lower society, or in the lower castes. It was so because the upper class, or in the upper class, the lady or the wife did inherit the property of the husband after her death, or after his death, after the husband's death. In order to get all the property which the wife had inherited, the Brahmin priests and also the other learned men and the other people of the higher society, they made a law so as to, and they gave it a legitimacy by invoking religion into that, and saying that it will be better if it will be for the betterment of both the husband and the wife, and that they both will be going to heaven if the woman, or if the wife was also to sit on the funeral pyre of the husband. All of this was done just so as to get that property which that woman had inherited from her dead husband, and that property will automatically pass on to the other people. So these were the things which were, or these were the actual motives and intentions between those evil practices like the sati system. But then the Britishers removed this sati system. They did not remove, they could not remove it outright, but then they made a law that made sati system unlawful, and this angered the upper classes of the Hindus. Now there were other laws such as the Widow Remarriage Act, which was passed, which also again angered the upper class of the Hindus. Now we had the Lex Loci Act. The Lex Loci Act is nothing but as it is the Hindu Properties Act or the Inheritance Act. What this Inheritance Act or this Lex Loci Act did was, previously it was unlawful, or previously if some Hindu converted to another religion like Christianity or Islam, then the property of that, or that person who has converted to the different religion, will not be able to inherit his parents' property or his father's property. But the Britishers removed this law and made it possible, made it lawful, that even if someone is converting to a different religion, he or she will be able to inherit her father's or his father's property. Now this was seen by the Indians, or this was seen by the Hindus as something to undermine their religion, and also to convert people, or give a impetus, or give some kind of a motivation to those people who did not previously want to convert, to get converted to Christianity. Now there was also the introduction of the railways and the telegraph. Now when we are talking of the railways, so in the Indian system for the past 2000 years nearly, there was a very well defined caste system, in which the upper castes would not mingle with the lower castes, and if the lower castes mingle with the upper caste, it would mean some kind of a, or it would be unholy or unpious for the upper caste to mix with the lower castes. And there was this well defined caste system which was already in place. The Britishers introduced the railways, and the railway coaches did something to undermine the 2000 years of caste system, because the Britishers did not allow, or did not give, or there was no different reservation in different bogies for different castes, because the Britishers did not understand the concept of caste system. You will not be finding this concept of caste system in the European countries. A caste system was very much Indian, or is still very much an Indian concept only. So this caste system was out of, or the understanding the caste system was something completely out of syllabus, I mean for the Britishers. So the Britishers did not understand the emotions which were attached with the caste system. So the Britishers made the railway carriages so that all the Indians had to get into the same carriage, and getting into the same carriage will mean all the castes coming together, sitting together, and that started undermining the caste system. This angered the upper caste, or this angered the upper class of the Hindus, and this also made them, or this became another reason why the upper class Hindus took up arms against the British when the revolt of 1857 started. Some other reasons were like, there were indignities hurled at the Indians. Like no Indian could have a position higher than that of a Britisher. Even an Indian prince, even an Indian Raja, even an Indian king could not have a position equal to that of maybe an English worker, or or a British servant, or maybe a British clerk. So even if the person or the Indian was a king, he had to salute the Britisher, given or irrespective of the Britisher's rank. The Britisher need not be a high-ranking official. He could have been just maybe a clerk, or maybe a servant somewhere in some British quarters, but then his position in the Indian society was given, or was made higher than that of the Indians who were already enjoying a privileged status in India before the Britishers came. This was another thing which angered a wide or a huge class of Hindus in particular, and also the Indians. Now there were other things like fears regarding the English education. The Britishers started teaching, or English was made, previously some groups of Britishers who were called the evangelists, those Britishers did advocate for the continuance of Indian vernacular languages in the schools. But later on, after Macaulay's Macaulay's dispatch or Wood's dispatch, what actually happened was that the Britishers introduced English and also the other European subjects and Western thoughts, Western science, Western philosophy into Indian schools, colleges, and also to the madrasas. That was those were the Islamic centers of learning, and also the pathshalas and the tolls. So these things started, these things instilled a fear in the minds of the Maulvis and also that of the Pandits, that the Britishers or the intentions of the Britishers was not completely in accordance with theirs, and that the Britishers wanted to convert most of the people or wanted to change the thinking and the way of thinking of the Indians. So these things started happening. Now again we have, so these were some of the social and the religious causes which did lead to the anger, which at the end led to the start of the revolt of 1857. Now when we talk of economic causes, the economic causes, the economic causes were actually the most important causes. Why? Because the economic causes caused, or these economic factors caused problems and also brought in hardships for a huge mass of Indians. When we are talking of the revolt of 1857, we are talking of the 18th century, sorry, the 19th century. Before that, in the 18th century, there was already industrialization and the industrial revolution taking place in the European countries, and the European countries were increasing their industries and they were having huge number of industries. There was an industrial boom. Now when we are talking of India, the same time as the Britishers and also the other Europeans were having an industrial boom and an industrial revolution, India was having deindustrialization. Indian industries were being destroyed, Indian industries were finished just because they did not want, or the Britishers did not want, the Indian industries to compete with the British industries. And gradually India's industries were lost forever. And it was not until 1947 that the Indian industrial revolution could start properly. So India did lose upon 200 to 300 years of industrial development and also industrial revolution. So India as such never did have an industrial revolution. We did have the agricultural revolution, which you all know as the Green Revolution. We did have the IT sector revolution in the 1900s, but then there was no industrial revolution in India as such. It was mostly because of the policies of the Britishers. The Britishers did not want the Indian industries to compete with those of the British industries. So the Britishers used India just as the place from where they could take away the raw materials, send those raw materials to England, get those raw materials processed, and then again send back those finished products to India and sell those finished products in India at a higher price. So it was a win-win situation for the Britishers. The Britishers, when they used to export the raw materials from India to England, the taxes were nearly zero. So the costs of export was very less, and the people in England could buy the, or the industrialists in England could buy the raw materials from India at very low prices. And they could, or after they made those goods, or after they converted those raw materials into finished goods, the finished goods which came to India were sold at very high prices, and the taxes were also increased. So these taxes again benefited the Europeans, the Britishers, and none of this benefit of the taxes came to the Indians as such. The trade and handicraft in India was ruined completely because of the policies of the Britishers. And previously the handicraftsmen and the artisans who used to be employed under the different Rajas, Maharajas, under the different kingdoms, they started losing their jobs, and most people started turning to agriculture. So now there was less number of craftsmen or handicraftsmen and more people in the agriculture sector. So there was a case of disguised unemployment in the agricultural sector. More people started moving towards the agricultural sector, but the agricultural production could not increase because the amount of land which was there under agriculture was fixed and constant. Then there was the impoverishment of the cultivators. When we are talking of the impoverishment of the cultivators, It was actually mainly in the permanent settlement areas. What was the permanent settlement? The permanent settlement was one kind of revenue collection system of the Britishers, which was introduced in Bengal, Assam, Bihar, Odisha, places of modern day Jharkhand. So these areas were very rich or very fertile. These are very fertile areas. I mean, Jharkhand isn't that fertile, but those areas, the other areas of Bengal, Bihar, you have Odisha, you have Assam. These are very fertile areas, and the cultivation or the amount of or the total number of this area, the complete area, I'm sorry, I'm just okay, so this complete area, the area of the Bengal province, was given to zamindars, and the land was divided amongst the zamindars, and the zamindars were asked to pay a certain amount, a fixed amount of rent or a fixed amount of tax to the Britishers every year. This amount was fixed, and the zamindars could, or if the zamindars did collect more tax, they could keep the extra tax for themselves. So this was a very good situation for the zamindars. So the zamindars started extracting more taxes from the cultivators. They started extracting more taxes from the people who were cultivating the land, and if those people were unable to cultivate the land, or if those people were unable to pay the taxes, the zamindar would remove them from the land, or maybe just remove them from the land and make them work as bonded laborers or begar laborers. So this was a very troublesome situation for the cultivators. Also, the Britishers did not see or did not have any concern for the weather factors which did impact the agricultural productivity. So the Britishers did demand the same amount of tax every year, given whatever had been the agricultural productivity. The Britishers had to get their own taxes. So they started putting undue pressure on the zamindars, and the zamindars, if they could not pay the taxes on time, the zamindar was removed and a newer zamindar was placed, or a newer zamindar was put in his place. So this caused this was one reason why a lot of zamindars also took up arms, or a lot of erstwhile zamindars or old zamindars who had been dispossessed or displaced from their seat of zamindari seat, were or took up arms against the Britishers when the revolt of 1857 started. The zamindars were there were the handicraftsmen who had lost their jobs, there were the other people who had lost their jobs, there were the impoverished cultivators who had been removed or who had been evicted out of their lands. So these people were harboring some kind of a grudge against the Britishers. So when the time came, they took up arms against the Britishers, and they also played a very important and a vital role in the revolt of 1857. I guess I'll be leaving it till this part. I hope it was clear to you all till this part. If you did have any kind of doubt, or if there is some doubt, if there is some clarification you require, then please mention it in the comment section. I'll be answering to those doubts. Till then, please stay safe, be safe, enjoy a bit of history, and also keep yourself occupied with something good. Thank you.